It seems obvious to me that world politics will not remain the same after Donald Trump's victory in the presidential elections in the United States for anyone who follows any political trend. However, Donald Trump's victory is precisely the case when world politics began to change, even before the moment when the triumph of the former President of the United States became known. On the evening of Election Day, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made the decision to dismiss the country's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, from a position that was crucial not only for the leadership of the Israeli army, but also for the contacts between the Israeli government and the administration of President Joseph Biden. The complicated relationship that Biden has with Netanyahu largely left the Israeli Prime Minister with little hope for any productive business contacts, not so much with Biden himself, but with the American president's entourage. And Yoav Gallant played the role of a person capable of reconciling the interests of the Israeli government and the administration of the US president by dismissing Gallant from the position of defense minister. Netanyahu clearly demonstrated that he no longer needs such contacts, that for him, Joseph Biden is not just a lame duck, but a person who is no longer capable of making any important decisions for the Israeli Prime Minister. Netanyahu and Gallant had other disagreements related to how Israeli policy should develop. I would say the disagreements are fundamental. The Prime Minister of Israel speaks of a war to a victorious end, although it is still unclear what kind of victory for Israel the operation against the terrorist group Hamas in the Gaza Strip should conclude with, and whether it will be possible to achieve the final demilitarization of the terrorist group Hezbollah in Lebanon, given that both groups are using not only the obvious support of the population, but also the support of Iran, which is ready to spend resources to destabilize the situation in the Middle East as proof of its capabilities in confrontation with the United States. And behind Iran, as we know, are Russia and China. And here, the new old president of the United States will have to make a choice not only and not so much in favor of supporting Israel in this conflict, but rather in favor of a real hard confrontation with Tehran, Moscow, and Beijing. And we see that Donald J. Trump is looking for ways to de-escalate at least the situation related to the Russian-Ukrainian war, given that any agreements with Moscow strengthen its capabilities to support Tehran. And this is also a very complicated equation in which Israel clearly would not want to find itself. John Gallant tried to talk about the possibilities of a temporary political settlement of the conflict, which should at least lead to the release of Israeli hostages. Bidding farewell to the Israel Defense Forces and his fellow citizens as the country's Minister of Defense, he noted that history will not forgive the current leaders of Israel if they fail to free the hostages taken by the terrorist group Hamas on October 7th, 2023. The IDF is making vigorous efforts to free the people held captive by Hamas. However, we fully understand that military efforts alone are clearly insufficient here, and the possibilities for a political settlement that could lead to the release of a large group of people held in unbearable conditions for more than a year are clearly not in sight. And with the resignation of Yoav Gallant as Israel's defense minister, these possibilities have actually become even fewer. However, the ruling coalition that currently governs Israel has strengthened, which can be called the far-right government of the country, possibly the most right-wing, since the declaration of the independence of the State of Israel on May 14, 1948. But this is clearly not what worries Benjamin Netanyahu right now, who is counting on a symphony of political views between this far-right government of Israel and the administration that Donald Trump will literally be forming starting today. Essentially, Benjamin Netanyahu demonstrated loyalty to the future formation of this new administration, even before it became clear that the 45th President of the United States was becoming the 47th, and returning to the White House as a triumphant figure, ready for a fight against his opponents, and to the elimination of all the political legacy associated with the one he despises, Joseph Biden. And this, of course, means a radical revision of the course of Middle Eastern settlement, where Biden tried to maneuver and persuade Netanyahu towards the possibility of a political resolution to the conflict, at least in the form of a ceasefire. Donald Trump is likely to encourage the Israeli Prime Minister to take even tougher and more decisive actions in the Middle East. This in turn could lead to a confrontation of a scale unforeseen by either Benjamin Netanyahu or Donald Trump. But it is also clear that it would be unwise to speak of the responsibility solely of the Prime Minister of Israel, or the future and former President of the United States for such a confrontation. Such a confrontation, a serious struggle between democracies and dictatorships, is primarily attributed to the leaders of authoritarian regimes. Such a confrontation, as a method of weakening the United States, including their positions in the Middle East, is of interest to both Vladimir Putin and Ayatollah Khamenei. It is clear that after Donald Trump's victory in the presidential elections in the United States, the degree of this confrontation will increase every day, every week, every month, and every year. Not only not promising to end any conflicts, but also promising new ones, much larger, bloodier, and more serious. And one can only wonder if Donald Trump will be able to accept this challenge and become the president of an endless war of regional conflicts so that the world does not slide into a third world war. Benjamin Netanyahu has no special choice. Accepting this choice is in fact the key to maintaining the security and viability of Israel. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow me on my social media, on the Patreon channels Biden Coffee and Donald that help these resources grow. Use the sponsorship feature on YouTube itself. Worldly.